Beans, cool beans. Well, also too, Jim, I definitely thought you did. If you wouldn't have said it, I thought you did that on purpose with the music. I'm like, is it fading out right at 8 o'clock? I'm like, well, but you guys, I'm excited to be able to, of course, we hang out every single morning. Always love to start every single call off with gratitude, just because I'm always extremely grateful, especially to spend my morning with you guys, right? For we're in a group where we're here to be able to call each other up. We are here to be able to raise our hands and say, hey, look, I want to be held accountable. I want to get to that next level, and I want to be in a group of like-minded people. So, with that, my topic for today is how to get the most out of conference. Now, you're probably wondering, Michael, conference is 30 days away. Why in the world are we talking about how to get the most out of conference right now? Shouldn't we be talking about that like a week before or a couple days before conference starts? No, because how to get the most out of conference actually starts right now, right? It actually started a couple weeks ago. What do I mean by this? Right? There's going to be two types of folks going into conference, right? And I'm going to break it down. There's going to be the first person. You're going to be the first person going. You're going to go into conference. You're doing what you're doing right now, not really doing anything different. You're going in there looking for everything. You're going to hear so many things. You're going to take the notes. You're going to learn what you need to learn. You're going to get the inspiration and the motivation that you need. And then coming out of conference, you're going to look at your notes. You're going to be like, man, where do I start? What do I actually apply? Like, what do I actually take action on right now? But you heard everything because you didn't really know what you needed to go into conference to get out of conference. Because when it comes to conference, you guys, you're not going in there to be able to get everything. You're really just going in there to get the one thing. And how do you get the one thing you need to apply to your business to transform your business right now? What that looks like is you challenge yourself right now to be able to stretch your capacity and stretch what you're doing when it comes to work ethic and your activity, whether it's on the production side, whether it's on the recruiting side, and you push yourself to do things you haven't done before. So you can look at your numbers. You have enough numbers going through the system and going through the funnel so you can really identify what you're good at and what you need to grow in. Because what sometimes we think we need to be able to fix things on the phone script or I'm like, man, I'm really not that good at dialing. Well, maybe it's just you're not that good at dialing because you're doing 150 to 200 dials. And maybe if you did 600 dials in a week, you will really see that you're good at dialing. You can book 15 appointments a week. So it's like, man, I actually don't need to work on my phone script. If I just did 600 dials a week and got my appointments over and I pushed myself and I doubled or tripled my activity. It's like, man, I actually really am good on the phones. Maybe your show rate is really good, right? You figure out, man, I am really good at making sure my appointments show up when I'm booking 15 appointments and I'm actually having a 60-70% show ratio. Then you learn as now you're sitting on 8 to 10 appointments consistently a week, and it's like, you know what? I need to get better at my appointments, right? My posture. I need to get better at my posture. I need to get better at asking quality questions. I need to get better at my role and purpose. So as you roll into conference, you know the one thing that you need. You get to breakouts just came out what last week. You know what breakout rooms to be able to sign up for. You know who to be able to reach out to, right, at conference and build a relationship with and introduce yourself to when you hear people speak on this call, when you hear people speak on the national call, when you hear people guest speak on your call, you get to highlight their genius and go to them not with hey, I want to be a better producer, like hey man, like I'm like this is what I'm struggling with. I'm struggling in my appointment process with like keeping my posture and learning how to be able to ask better questions, right? How do you go about that? You get to ask specific questions. There's nothing better than going to a leader with very specific questions, right? And knowing what you need to be able to work on. But you get to again take away that one thing. Maybe it's recruiting, right? Maybe you're recruiting and your recruiting is slower, not where you want it to be. Well, this next 30 days, you have the opportunity to be able to be able to push yourself, right? And you get to go out there, do all the market, whether it's cold market, whether it's warm market, right? You get to go out there and make sure you're having a lot of applicants, right? Come through the funnel, come through the system, because maybe right now it's not that you have a recruiting problem, it's just that you don't have enough people applying problem because you're not investing enough. Maybe you're not putting out enough job ads. So this next 30 days, you're doing that and you have people coming in. And now since you have people coming in, you're able to easily identify where is the bottleneck in my recruiting process? Where are people getting stuck and where are people not transitioning from one step to the next? Maybe you're not getting anybody you're getting through the interview process, but they're not actually committing and signing up for pre-licensing. So, okay, man, I need to start there, right? I don't need to learn and understand completely how to make sure we're getting consistent writers. If I can't even get people to sign up for pre-licensing, I need to start there. That's what I'm getting out of it. That's what I'm going into conference for, right? To be able to work on that part. Maybe you're good on that. You're getting people signed up for pre-licensing, you're getting them onboarded, they're officially ready to write, and maybe you're even getting them as a new writer. But then you don't know how to make, like, you're not getting folks to be consistent writers. So now you need to go into conference for, you're looking for leadership skills. Maybe it's you need to learn how to set better expectations. Maybe you need to learn how to be able to provide more clarity to your agents. And that's the one thing you're going into conference for. And that's that second person you get the opportunity to be over this next 30 days is somebody who is pushing themselves, right? To again, expand their capacity, do something different to get something different so you can go into clarity. Because, like I said, you're going into conference, you're going to hear everything. You're going to get the motivation, you're going to get the inspiration, you're going to hear all these things, but you're really just looking for the one thing to transform your business. And to get that one thing to transform your business, you have to transform what you're doing right now. That's where it comes from. So it doesn't start a week before conference or the day of conference to be thinking about these things. It starts right now and what you're willing to do. And another thing I wanted to be able to talk on today is, right, when you're at conference and you want to be able to introduce yourself to different leaders or different people that you heard speak, right? Because you want to be able to gain some type of knowledge from them. Because I get a question asked to me quite often, to be honest, of like, Michael, like, how do you, because I'm very like vocal about it, like how I know that I have gaps, right? And things for learning, I won't say gaps, but growing opportunities and learning opportunities for me to be able to learn. And I do a lot of self-evaluation so I can learn from others and pick the pieces that I like to be able to fill that. So I go to them and ask questions. But how do you do that, right? Opposed to going to Jim and be like, Jim, man, you've been able to build an amazing agency. Like, how'd you do it? Like, like, I'm new to building. Like, where should I start? I go to Jim and ask him that question. Where do I start? Everybody starts at a little bit different point. Like, but if I can be a little bit more specific, I remember going to Jim, was it probably a year, maybe two ago, going to him and asking him about how to lead leaders. I'm like, man, you've been able to break out agency owners. You've been your agency is like scaling and it's growing a ton, man. I'm still just an agency owner, man. I'm struggling on how to lead leaders and right how to set those expectations better. Jim, like, I guess how do you go about that process? But I was very specific with that. I remember when I was brand new, and some of you guys may have heard this, right? When I was brand new, and this is why most folks don't want to ask people certain questions or don't want to associate or put themselves out there, because I did it, by the way. I remember being brand new and going into a virtual conference that my upline Marty Valor put on. He did a mini virtual conference, so many different speakers he had come on. He had Whitaker come on, he had Delaney come on, he had Jimenez come on, he had Susie come on. And I didn't go in there with the expectation of like anything besides being able to learn, but I was able to hear my guy, Jeremy Whitaker, right? I was able to hear his story. It resonated with me, right? His process. But this was in September of 21. I didn't ask Marty for his contact information to reach out because I wasn't doing anything yet. And I remember hearing from many different leaders like, hey, if you're going to reach out to somebody, if you reach out to a leader here, they're going to ask you for your numbers and what you're doing, right? They're not going to coach you off of emotion. They're going to coach you off of facts and what's really happening. So I didn't reach out because I'm like, I was still just throwing things at the wall and really not taking this business seriously. So it wasn't until I didn't actually speak with Jeremy and want to reach out to him until December of 2021, because in November and December, that's actually when I committed to the business and started putting enough work in and putting the activity in, where I actually had things to be able to ask him. Because I was able to get through my learning curve when it came to dialing. I was really, by the time I spoke with Jeremy, I was really good at booking appointments and my show rate was good. I just couldn't close a thing to save anybody's life. Like I couldn't buy a sale if I wanted to. So I remember going into that conversation with Jeremy, he gave me an hour and a half of his time, didn't know my face, didn't know who I was, but that's just the culture of our company, right? To be able to pour in and to be able to serve. And then going in there with specific questions about the appointment. And we were on the phone for an hour and a half. I remember when I was just started building April of 2022, I remember hearing this guy on a call named Andrew Jimenez. Him being at the time, I believe he was the youngest person to hit agency owner in the company. I think he was 21, 22 when he did it. And he was on track that year to be able to hit 130 and be the youngest 130 in symmetry at 27 years old. And I remember when I first started recruiting, there was this doubt that I had in my mind. There was this lack of confidence or this lack of credibility that I felt like I had because I was a 22-year-old kid starting to be able to build an agency. And I was wondering, man, how can I lead others of any background, of any age? And I remember going to Andrew, I'm like, man, how did you build yourself up to have the confidence and to be able to lead with the authority, pretty much, like, not I wouldn't say authority, but like just lead with that to where folks aren't looking at you be like, man, this is this 22-year-old kid. I've been in the industry already for 15 years. I'm 50 years old. I have this person, he has no life experience. Why in the world I'm going to follow him? I remember going to Andrew with that conversation and getting specific advice from Andrew on that because I know that's where he had grew himself through already. I remember starting to be able to build my agency and I had just hit team leader and I was in my run for key leader and I started thinking these thoughts like, how do I build a culture? How do I build a winning culture? How do I build an environment where folks want to be there? I don't force them to be there, but they want to be there because this person, I remember her saying a ton, right? We lead a volunteer army here. So how do I build an environment like that? And I remember hearing Sarah Reinecke on a call a month before and her talking about that and that being her genius and that being her superpower. So when it comes to asking people questions, you guys, and going to get advice and coaching from them, especially in an environment like conference, when again you get to hear whatever they're most times, whatever folks are speaking about on a national call, on this call, on right, they come on your team call, they're typically going to stay in their genius a lot of times and you're going to be able to easily pick up what their superpower is. And that's what you want to speak to them about. So I remember talking to Sarah about that. Now, Sarah took a little bit longer to talk to her about it, by the way, because she just didn't respond to me for like 3 weeks. It took her like 3 weeks to get back to me and me blowing up her Instagram a couple of times. But she got back to me, though, right? A little persistence. In my mind, the worst thing she was going to tell me is, no, Michael, I don't have time, which was all right. But staying in their genius, right? And you want to be able to, the first thing it's going to come from is you have to be able to self-evaluate and figure out, all right, where do I want to grow now? What is it that I'm missing that is preventing me from getting to the next level? And who is great in that area? Who is great in that area that I can connect and talk with them about that so I can get the most of it. But again, people love talking about themselves. So I'm talking to somebody that want about their genius and their superpower. They love talking about especially something that they're good at, right? If somebody is a good producer, right, and they're known for only being a producer, I'm not going to go to them about recruiting and say, hey, how do I build this agency? If somebody's a good recruiter and they're not known for production, or maybe they're just not producing right now, I'm not going to go to, hey, how do I become an elite producer? I want to stay in their genius, but that comes from already engaging in calls like this. That comes from association. That comes from taking notes when you're on calls and actually being intentional. So you can get the most out of it because the opportunity may not present itself right there in the moment, but when you actually get the opportunity to meet them and they're walking next to you on the way to the theater at conference, and you're like, oh snap, like Scott Schnitzer is right next to me. Should I like should I introduce should I talk to him? Man, I have a million questions for him. You got a 5 minute walk here, buddy. You better have those questions prepared so you can have that conversation and then get their information to be able to carry it on later. And the last thing I'm going to talk about, right, just because I want to give this conference story because this changed the game for me at my first conference in 2022, right? Talking about that intentionality, right? Going into the conference in 2022, I was already a really good producer, right? The month before I had, at the time, it was my highest net place month. I had net place 29,000. So I didn't go into conference thinking like, hey, like I need to learn more about production. I was confident in that. But the thing I wasn't confident in yet was I was recruiting and getting people through the system. I had a writer or two because, like I said, I hit team leader on the way to hitting key leader, but I actually knew nothing about building. I was very like lost still and just very random and throwing things at the wall. Like I was just going through the motions and doing the interviews and getting people on board, but there was no process or system to it. But in my mind at the time, I never even thought about a system. I remember this is probably I took so many notes at that 2022 conference, but the most impactful thing that I participated in, there was a key leader and above breakout room. It was led by Brian Delaney and Brad Smith. and a bunch of other speakers in there like Chris Clark and Ian Graham. He had Nate Offer and Derek Brock. He had the Colburns in there, and Ian Graham and Chris Clark led on cold market. I'm like, man, I'm doing cold market. And Ian Graham went through a few things talking about a system, talking about tracking your recruiting numbers. I'm like, tracking your recruiting numbers? I never even thought about tracking my recruiting numbers. He was like, you need to be able to identify the bottleneck. I have filters, right? Where are you getting stuck in? Then he talked about once you actually bring an agent on board, setting the proper expectation and doing like a goal planning session with them, right? Figure out what are their 90-day goals, having an actual onboarding process. And I remember sitting there in that key leader breakout that Friday, and I'm like, it blew my mind because it was something that never crossed my mind before, but it was also the very specific thing that I needed in that moment. And from there, conference was crazy. I remember I wanted to meet Ian, but I didn't get the opportunity to like meet him after that. So I shot him a message on Instagram after conference. I was like, "Hey man, I was in your breakout when you talked about this, and you spoke about code market. You spoke about like tracking that. You also spoke about like onboarding, setting expectations. I was like, man, I'd love to set up a call to be able to learn from you and kind of dive deeper into that because I need to be able to implement that in my process." And what do you know? Symmetry leaders are symmetry leaders. He gave me 30 minutes of his time. We hopped on a Zoom and he broke everything down. But for me, right, I was a little selfish. 30 minutes wasn't enough. And I saw that he had a Houston boot camp coming up, literally like 2 weeks later. That Houston boot camp, it was him, it was Delaney, it was Sarah Reineke, my upline, Marty Valor. And I'm like, man, there's more things I want to talk to Ian about. I was like, man, I definitely want to meet Delaney because he killed it at conference. So I was like, even though financially it wasn't the smartest thing, I remember my fiance saying, like, Michael, should you really like buy a flight and go to Houston? Like for that boot, we were just at conference. Like, what are you gonna get from this Houston boot camp? And I'm like, I have to get there and be able to develop that relationship more, dive into that. And what do you know? Like that from that one thing, and hear Ian talk at that 2022 conference, from going to Houston and learning a little bit more and developing that relationship. The other thing right here in Delaney, I remember when I was at that boot camp, like I was so nervous about speaking on this little Rising Stars panel. And he said one thing to me that changed me speaking in front of people from there on out. Because I was so nervous. I was like, man, like I was so many things I wanted to say and I didn't say the right things when I was up there. And I feel like I messed up. And Delaney just looked at me and he was like, who are you? He was like, get over yourself. You're not up there speaking in front of people because of you. You're up there to be able to give the one thing to one person in the crowd, right? Everybody's not going to resonate with you, but there's going to be one person that will, and that's all that matters. Get over yourself. And from there on out, because again, I wanted to connect with him on speaking because he did such a good job at the 2022 conference. I've never been nervous to speaking in front of anybody again because it's not about me. It's about me serving others. I'm not up here for my ego and to fulfill myself. I'm here to be able to give back. So I'm like, you know what? I don't have to serve every single person. I just have to make sure I'm giving back to one person. So you guys, the reason I'm gonna wrap it up there though, but I wanted to be able to give you those examples and I wanted to be able to give you that challenge going into this next 30 days to push yourself to do something you've never done so you can have absolute clarity going into conference so you can get exactly what you need from it. But not only that, when you actually get in those moments where you get to have the opportunity to have those conversations, right? What does that actually look like? Right? Don't go in there random. Go in there very strategic. Go in there very tactful so you can make the most, but then also you can make the most out of that leader's time or that person's time you're speaking to because they're having a bunch of conversations. And the last thing is don't, after that conversation, don't never talk to that leader again. The best thing you can do for any leader here is follow back up and say, hey, Jim, I did what you said and it worked. What's next? Like that's in my mind, that's one of the most fulfilling things, right? It being like, hey, I did what you said and it worked. What's next? I did that so many times with the mentors here. So, Jim, that's what I got today.
Man,
Can
so
I say
good.
something real
Oh
quick,
yeah,
Jim?
jump in. Yeah, go in.
I, Michael, I just want to say truly why you are so great at this. And I just want to shine the light on you for a second. The way that you raise your hand and you ask questions of the people you admire is so beautiful, so respectful, so intentional. You show the people you're speaking to so much respect when you're approaching them. Like I remember the first time you reached out to me with a question, and I couldn't not get on a Zoom with you because of just
Mm,
the way you postured yourself. And so I want to shine that light on you that this is one of your superpowers, Michael. And it is truly, truly special the way you position yourself. So you guys like take everything he's telling you and take it to heart. And then the best thing, Michael, I remember you've always done after you have asked somebody else, you always finish it with, how can I serve you?
yeah.
And I just want to shine that light on you so big because you are such a servant leader here. Not only are you seeking out, you praise them like, hey, I respect so much that you've done this. Like people are like, oh, well, let me talk, right? Like you make people want to talk because of the way you do it. And I just want to celebrate you for that. It is such a superpower of yours. And the way you've always finished it is, how can I serve you? And it's just beautiful. And I just want people to know like that about you. It's truly awesome.
I appreciate that. I definitely do. And the serving you, like the whole the to be able to ask that at the end, you guys like, how can I serve you? It comes from the leaders that came before and seeing everybody else serve and having the want just to and the desire to be in that position. Because I remember being brand new, it was like, man, there's nothing I can bring to the table. And then as I started learning things, I was like, man, like I want to be able to give back how so many people poured into me, right? So just to be able to keep that, keep it going. So it was just because there's so many leaders that came before me that aspired to be like that. I was like, I gotta serve. Like that's just what we do here at Symmetry.
That's just what we do here at Symmetry. I love that. What a great way to close this up for content. Breakout rooms are open. Let's rock and roll, team.